I am an S3 alumnus. I graduated in 2009, and since then I've been a couple of years. I worked with Professor Surya Narayanan from MEC on his startup, and then I worked for a large part of my career in Bosch, and for the past 3 years I have been with Siemens. So today I'm going to talk to you a little about what corporate life is like. I'm deliberately put the pun over there. So I'll try to focus more. I will give you a flavor of corporate life, but I will focus your attention on what are the facets of a core job that influence this corporate life. I'm sure you guys would have a lot of questions already before this talk about what is it like to be in core and similar questions. So as Shiven suggested, you could, if you have some questions during the talk, just type it out in the chat box, and I'll circle back to them when I'm done with with my talk. And of course, at the end of the talk, I would be happy to take more questions from you orally as well. So this is how I'm planning to take you through the topics. I'll take about 20 to 25 minutes of your time, maybe more if time permits. I'll give you a run through of what a typical career journey in core job looks like. Uh, of course, it would be common to a lot of other jobs as well, and I will try to focus on experiences that are unique to a core job. After that, I'll give you certain pointers that might help you decide if the core job is the right place for you. And finally, there are certain lessons that I learned over the past decade or slightly more than a decade that have directly or indirectly helped me to keep a level head and keep progressing with my career. So I'd like to share a couple of these points with you as well. A disclaimer here is that these pointers that I'm talking about, they would sound very cliche, but I like to consider them as hygiene factors rather than success mantras. So what I mean to say is, if you do adopt these pointers that I would like to give you, it might not turn your life around. But if you do not adopt them, you might be in for disappointment. You might be in for some amount of struggle until you realize these points on your own. So let's begin. The place where you are, especially the fourth yearites. I was at this specific juncture about 12 years back when we were preparing for placements, and September, October was the time frame when PPTs were happening, placement talks. There was a buzz about resume generation. There is a one-page resume, there is a two-page resume, there is a core resume, there is a non-tech resume, all sorts of things. I'm sure you guys would also have such things going on if the process hasn't changed much in campus. What I was doing is I was trying to at that time piece together all the activities that I did over the past 5 years in campus. I was hoping that if I start looking back at what I have done, I might get some sort of an epiphany about what I want to do next. I was an active member of Technique. I don't know if Technique exists today in some form or it might have a name change, but this was the technical club of IIT Bombay. I was also an active member of Kritika, the astronomy club. My friends and we spent so many sleepless nights during TechFest to make sure that our robots were in a position to kick ass in the competitions, and which we did. So if you remember, if you know competitions like Micromouse, my team we were the national champions in Micromouse 3 years straight during our stay in campus. On the academic front, I started off as a BTech in mechanical, and I was getting a little disillusioned with a very, very strong focus on thermal and fluid engineering, while my interests lied in more in the robotics and automation part. So I think at that point, I was one of the, I was actually the only person 5 years before me, until 5 years before me, who branch changed from BTech to dual degree in the same department. So with all this, when I was looking at all of these things that I did over the past 5 years, I was quite pleased with myself, and I was like, yes, I am now prepared. I am equipped to go at all the challenges that industry and a core job has for me. But this was the time 2008. So I don't know if you guys know or remember what happened at the end of 2008. So there were two major events, one global and one local. Lehman Brothers declared bankruptcy, and the subprime housing crisis began in US, and it led to a global recession. The placement season was badly affected by this. A lot of companies who were planning to come had to pull out because of the economic uncertainty in their businesses. There were still a few companies who were doing well, who were probably not affected by this recession, and they were coming to campus. But as luck would have it, 26th November happened. The Mumbai terror strikes happened in 4 or 5 days before day zero of placements, and that kind of threw a spanner in the placement season. So why am I telling you this? Do I think that my career would have been at another level had these events not happened? Probably not. What I think is this COVID situation, this uncertainty over the economy over the next couple of years, your situation might also be similar to what we had back then in 2008. Probably better, probably worse. We can't tell right now. But even then, there will still be days jobs. There will still be people who will get PPOs. There will still be that one guy who features in all newspapers across the country who gets an 8-figure starting salary. If you are that guy, congratulations. But if you are not, you what you need to remember is that getting your first job is not that big a deal. It is just a tiny speck on your career path. It is just the beginning of when you start exploring or rather building your career block by block. I'll tell you one more story that is slightly relevant to what I'm talking about. So Siemens was one of the first tech companies that came to campus then. And so it was like the day zero of core jobs at that point. However, Siemens had a policy that they would only recruit elect guys, be it DDs or MTechs, whatever, but elect. Uh, but thanks to our Jugado placement norm, I got a chance to interview with them. I didn't get a job, but what I got to know is that this team that came to interview or came to hire was doing extremely interesting things, and this was something that was aligned with what I want to do. So of course, after that we parted ways. We went our own ways. I started working with Bosch a couple of years down the line. I went to Germany for 3 years with Bosch, and after I came back to India, I came to know that this very group it was hiring and it was in need of a profile that is very similar to what I built over these years. So when I applied to them, when I approached them, they were more than willing to have me, and the interview was an extremely seamless process in that case. So the moral of the story is don't worry about these initial rejections. Keep building your expertise, and opportunities will show up as and when they have a knack of turning up at the most as the least expected times. Now, let's say that you got a job. Now what? Life to ab chill hai? Is that what it is, or is that something else? Unfortunately, in core, your first job typically is a beginning of a steep learning phase called discover. You will learn a lot starting from your first day in office. You have to embrace this learning phase, but at the same time, don't don't try to let it shake your confidence. So don't feel disappointed if you think that it is too overwhelming for you or something. If you look at the colleagues that you will start working with, the senior colleagues, you will find their experience to be extremely daunting. And obviously, they have to have that experience because they have been at the job much longer than you have. So it is quite expected that they will do better than you in the initial days. However, there is a silver lining for you guys. So you might have heard this phrase called innocent until proven guilty in the legal context. Because of your education, IIT education and IIT degree, there is an unwritten sort of rule that applies in the industry that an IITian is generally considered smart until proven otherwise. So it is all up to you. You have some sort of a pseudo head start when you get into your first job. It is in your hands to capitalize on this benefit of doubt that you get from day one. And it is up to you to strengthen this image for the future batches as well. Uh, Similarly, when we entered IIT, I don't know if they do it now, but during our freshie orientation, they gave us a book, a compiled book, which had Insti lingo on it. And the industry also has a huge amount of lingo that it loves. But unfortunately, no one is going to give you a nicely compiled booklet. The industry will, however, throw all of these TLAs at you. And what are TLAs? Three-letter abbreviations. So basically, embrace these TLAs, embrace the jargon, and you will very soon be one among you will be embraced by the industry as well. So, like I just mentioned, the industry is obviously full of new jargon, but there is something more to it. And this is where things get a little serious. This is typically after your initial, what we call as the honeymoon period, where you are essentially just getting to know how things are done in the industry. This second phase is the understand phase, where you actually start building value and start contributing to the company. Now, let's take an example from the heart of engineering, mechanical engineering itself. Uh, Suppose you want to make an industrial conveyor belt. You might have all the background from your industrial design courses to make the optimum design. And then you can meet all the technical requirements that are given to you, and you can come up with the best design that education has to offer, or the theory until now has to offer. When you show it to the product owner, he's going to tell you that the design is way over budget. Your manager is going to tell you that it's fine that you're working on this project, but there are a lot of other projects that also need your help, and you might not be able to dedicate all your time to this project. Project manager is going to tell you that, hey, dude, the delivery for this project was yesterday. What are you doing? And at the same time, the manufacturing plant who is going to manufacture this conveyor belt will tell you that they can't manufacture your design because they did not invest on the kind of tooling that your design requires. So clearly, your education, your knowledge of design, where you could make an optimal design, really is not an optimum design anymore. So how do you tackle these non-technical challenges? How do you so do you wait for each of these challenges to crop up to learn, or can you do something else? So if you take the first approach, where you wait for every problem to come to you and then you try to do a course correction, you will take forever to get a footing in the industry. What do you do then? What you need to do is you need to be a very keen observer. It's not like from day one that you are going to be tasked with every small decision that the company takes. So there will be senior colleagues who are going to take a lot of decisions with inputs from your expertise. So observe, how does your colleague decide on a certain task. Try to ask them, why did they decide what they decided. So this gives you a peek into their decision making process, and this teaches you the things that they have collected as experience over the years, and this can really help you accelerate your understanding of the industry. Second thing is, it is obviously necessary whenever you enter a corporate world. There is a phrase that becoming a corporate stooge. What this means is you just become a part of the huge organization and then you don't have your own individuality. But you need to retain your individuality, sure. But you also need to embrace the work culture of the organization wherever you work. What this does for you is your colleagues then start trusting you more. They feel you are one of them, and then they can give you more responsibilities. And if you listen to Mr. Parker, with great power comes great responsibility, and the other way around is with responsibility, you also have a much more value in the organization. So I'll describe one instance to you from my own past where this helped me. To embracing this work culture kind of helped me. When I was working with Bosch in Germany, I wasn't the first Indian colleague who was working there. There were a lot of colleagues from India who were working in different teams. When I was working there, I realized that my opportunities were getting limited primarily because of the language barrier. My work was being valued, no doubt. So I was getting, so I could see my work going into the vehicles, into the test demonstrator vehicles that they were building up. But what was lacking is I was not getting to interact with the customers. And this is but obvious because if you don't speak the language, there will be a hesitation for the customer to speak English, and then it is difficult to get onto the same page very quickly. So I could have very easily said, okay, I am just spending a couple of years here, so I will get opportunities back in India. So let's not worry about it. And I could have foregone the opportunities that were there in Germany. But instead, what I did is I started learning German. I went to classes, language classes after office hours, and within a year or so, I was fluent enough to have technical discussions with my colleagues and also with outsiders. So, with this, I saw a change in the attitude amongst my colleagues. They started trusting me with customer conversations. And towards the end of my stay in Bosch in Germany, I was already handling customers like BMW or Daimler or Volkswagen myself. So this is the shift that happens when you try to embrace the work culture, when you try to accept the organization as it is and not try to overhaul the entire organization to suit your needs. Uh, what another moral from this that I would like to point out is you need to take control of your career. If you wait for somebody else to give you opportunities, that might not happen very soon. So take control of your career, gain the trust of your colleagues, and then growth opportunities will flow for you. Having said that, there is a lot of companies do take cognizance that you guys are a great talent pool to have in the organization, and they initiate something called fast track career paths. So, for example, Eaton in India has this program called Eaton Technology Leadership Program. Bosch, for example, has a program called Junior Managers Program. These programs are typically targeted at freshers or probably 1 year experience in the industry, and they're meant to expose you to a lot of breadth early on, and they prepare you for more challenging opportunities. So whenever you enter your organization, you should keep an eye out for such programs and apply whenever these programs turn up. Finally, the next phase of your career, which I call it as impress, this would be the most rewarding phase of staying in a core job. So this is the phase where your education that you had over the past 5 years, or even your schooling, the basics that you learned over there, your success in the past, your experience in the industry until then. So all of this comes together and it kind of serves as a launch pad for you to shine. And this is where you need to make sure that you capitalize on every opportunity that comes your way. The biggest challenge in this phase, as per me, is the added responsibilities. So typically around this time, probably 4 to 5 years into the industry, or maybe less, maybe more, you might get married, you might have children, and these personal changes in your life will also require your attention. And one of the big questions that at that point you will answer in this phase is, how do I balance my personal life with my career? And that is one of the most challenging questions that you will have to tackle at that point. But what you need to learn is, or what you need to remember is, you should never stop learning. The moment your cost to the company becomes higher than the value you bring to the company, you become a white elephant, and no organization would want to retain a white elephant. The only way you can tackle this is by continuously diversifying your experience. So keep learning, keep building newer skills, so that you're always relevant. You're always the go-to guy uh, for any new or any uncertain task that comes to the organization. So now let's get a little more real into and talk about very specifically core jobs. What can you expect out of it? How does it touch other aspects of your life? We'll start with the nature of the work. So you might have seen this kind of a graphic in some WhatsApp forwards, or some social media somewhere. This basically tells you the kind of skill sets that you build over the entire schooling and college life, and then what kind of skill sets are really required for a job. Now, a very frank question you need to ask yourself: did this graphic make you happy? Did this graphic get you thinking that, hey, I'm so glad that I do not need to use any of this complex math that I learned over the last 15 years of my life, and I am extremely pleased that all of this is now behind me. If it made you happy, then I am afraid core job would definitely not be for you. So, just in the past 3 months itself, I have worked on spreadsheets, which is like a requirement. I have worked on presentations, including this one. I worked on coding. I worked on some high school geometry. I worked on Fourier transforms, partial derivatives, to just name a few. So there is a huge spectrum available when you are in a core job. And for me, it gets kind of better. Uh, my job reminds me daily that I am first an engineer and then a mechanical engineer. So I attend meetings where, in one of the meetings, we discuss the thermal behavior of an oil bath. What happens to the oil bath as it gets heated? Can we, with minimal number of sensors, predict the volume temperature of the oil bath? In another meeting, we are discussing what's the time complexity of a code snippet, and will this really create a problem in the firmware that we are trying to develop? And in yet another meeting, we are talking about choosing the right inductor so that we can minimize the ripple in a buck converter. So, moral of the story is that a core job needs very quick learners. And I'm sure you guys are equipped. So, given your pedigree of education, you guys got here because of this very quality, that you can learn quickly. At the same time, you need to not shy away from going back to basic concepts. It's very easy in the industry that a lot of things become thumb rules after a while. So while it is easy to get carried away by saying, okay, but this thumb rule does not allow me to take this decision, try to go back to the basics. Never lose sight of what is really the governing principle behind any of these so-called thumb rules that you will come across. So then let's talk of growth opportunities. And let me tell you, there are plenty of growth opportunities in core. I mentioned earlier that when you enter a core job, the learning curve is extremely steep, but equally steep is the growth curve. So the moment you exit this discover phase where you got a hang of things, and you enter this next phase of your career, you can really skyrocket if you give it enough dedication, if you have a good work ethic, and you just keep applying yourself day in and day out. And with an IIT education, actually, you're already well placed to grow very quickly and shine. But what I would recommend at this point is you should also focus on topics that unfortunately an engineering education today in India does not offer. And these are skills like soft skills like communication. Try to improve communication skills. Try to improve your emotional quotient. Try to work on interpersonal relations. So these things, along with your educational background, will really separate you from the crowd that exists in the industry today. And now let's come to perhaps the most important question of the evening. So जो लोग सो रहे थे अब तक, I think this is the question that you have been waiting for. ये जॉब देती कितना है? I will be very frank here. The starting salaries do not sound as attractive as those of your friends who will end up with a finance job or a consulting job. So, one way to rationalize this is this steep learning curve. Any organization that you join as your first job, they are going to get little value out of you in the first few years as compared to what they are paying you. So this is basically the characteristic of the discover phase. But the moment you get a hang of things, you know how things are done in the industry. This is the point when things change very soon. The ramp up of your salary, it will really be quite steep, and it will so in very soon it will be competitive to your friends and colleagues who chose non-tech jobs at the beginning of their careers. But mind you, though, if you have plans that you want to retire by 40, then I would say you're probably better off having a startup and hoping that Google buys you out. Uh, One more query about core jobs that I routinely get is what is the work-life balance? I don't know if you guys are aware of this metric. So work-life balance is basically how much time you would have in the day after you have completed the work expected of you. So core jobs are all about flexibility, except for the time when there is a delivery impending. Most of the other times, core jobs are very, very flexible. Most jobs have a typical requirement of a 40 to 50-hour work week, and this gives you a lot of time for yourself after every workday. But I have a different take on this work-life balance. For me, so unlike Garfield, I do not really hate Mondays. I think that if you're doing something that you like doing, then it does not really constitute as work. I especially like the flexibility of working because I can work as per my schedule, and this really gels well with this work from home situation that we are in now. So try and pick the first thing for you to do would be try and pick what you like to do. And then whatever your work is, it doesn't sound like something that you have to do. Uh, One last point I will make before I move to some general gyan as I promised earlier. So to be successful in a core job, what do you need above all else? So all of these things are kind of metrics that will help you decide whether you want to be in core or not. But one thing that you have to remember is you need to be passionate about engineering, and that is the only way to sustain being in a core job. So it is, you would know this is a trend in India, and this is also the reason why I asked Shivain to ask this question. Uh, Typically, a parent in India would be like, "बेटा पहले engineering कर लो, फिर passion follow कर लेना." I am not saying it is a bad thing at all. Actually, I agree with this. Given the lack of opportunities in non-engineering, non-medical fields in India, I think it is a very good risk mitigation plan that you complete your engineering education or your medical education, and then you think of what you want to do in life. But now you are at a stage where you have mitigated this risk. And at this point, I would request you guys to not still get sucked into the flow and follow your passion. And if your passion is engineering, then a core job will be very fulfilling for you. Uh, and there is also a cherry on top for you. So I am sure a core job is not only beneficial for you, but you entering a core job is also going to be beneficial to the industry. If you, I don't know if you have seen recent employability reports that are being generated by independent organizations, also some by the government of India. What is most striking there is the low employability of Indian engineers. And this is where you guys have an opportunity. So there is an acute shortage of good engineers in the industry. And you guys are already you have proven that you are good engineers. So you just have to ensure that you grasp this opportunity and rise and shine. So let's this coming towards the end of my talk, I'll give you some generic gyan about what I have learned in the last 12 years in the industry, 11 years. So these are not really relevant to core jobs or even to just jobs. So these are generally whatever you pursue after IIT. These would be some things that would be relevant that would help you uh, keep yourself sane. So, as I had mentioned earlier, these are not some mantras for success that are going to make you overnight successful. These are just factors that will groom you to become better people and better team players. So, the first thing is, how do you set goals for yourself? And why should you set goals at all? The answer is kind of intertwined together. So goals help us to keep ourselves motivated and they prime us for some setbacks that we might get while we are working on these goals. So some of you might have heard of dopamine and the effect, it's a chemical secreted in the brain and you might know the effect it has on our mind. So it kind of makes our mind crave for more and more dopamine. Like we are always itching to go through all new notifications on the phones, a new Facebook like or a mention, or an Instagram follow, or a Twitter retweet. So all of these things become cravings for us. And then to sustain or to feed into these cravings, we try to work on the next smart thing that we want to say on Facebook, or we start working on the next carefully curated picture that we want to post on Insta, or we look out for the next viral news that we can tweet. So goals also work in a similar way. Achieving goals gives us joy. So it's like a dopamine hit, if you will, and it motivates us to work towards the next goal for in search for the next hit. So what if I set a goal like I want to solve world hunger? A very noble thing to do, for sure. But do you think I can stay motivated throughout my journey? So this elusive dopamine hit that I'm not going to get at frequent intervals, it is going to make my mind choose some other activity that might get me this hit faster. So clearly the goals have to be realistic as well. Now, can I make a goal that I want to wake up the next morning and get out of bed? It's a realistic goal. It's very well achievable. But the problem is, it's so easy that the mind no longer considers it as an achievement. So while the goal has to be easy enough that we can plan out how do we achieve it, it has to be challenging enough that we feel this sense of acknowledgement once we reach the summit. So instead of trying to climb Mount Everest as a goal, you might start with Samir. You might start with doing Samir 10 times a day, and then go on to BMC, go on to Everest Base Camp, and so on and so forth. So this is how you would make more and more challenging goals, and in the pursuit of actually achieving something and giving that dopamine hit to your brain. Uh, Secondly, so there is obviously no alternative to hard work for sure. But while you work hard, while you slog it out in the office, while being fueled with caffeine and stale sandwiches, this is not only going to take a toll on your health, but it will also harm your productivity. There have been so many instances. I have been stuck with some problem at work. I have racked my brain over it, putting long nights, and the answer has come to me in the weirdest of situations. So when I was, let's say, going for a run, or when I was in the gym doing some run-of-the-mill exercises, inspiration struck. And what I realize is taking your mind off something, focusing on other aspects of your life really has a lot of impact on your overall productivity as well. So focus on your health. Focus not just on your physical health, but your mental health, your emotional health as well. Make sure you have a group of friends who uh, who can mutually keep each other sane at all times. Believe in yourself. So you are the creme de la creme of the society, and you have to back yourself up with this confidence whenever you're up against seemingly impossible tasks. At the same time, you need to be mindful of others. So you need to treat other people with respect, and you need to give them the same kind of benefit of doubt that you would enjoy in the initial few years of your career. So when I talk of the types of colleagues I've had a few colleagues who are extremely brilliant, but they were very difficult to work with. So they were the kind of people who thought that they are the only ones who have figured out life, and they just wanted people to follow them no matter what. Now I asked their team members, how do you feel about working with such brilliant guys in your team? uh, are you really happy with working with this person? And the answer to my surprise was a resounding no. I tried to probe further. Why is it? So this guy is obviously so brilliant at his work, and he can achieve all his goals, and he takes a lot of load off the team. Why do you not like working with this person? And what they told me is it is all fine that this guy achieves his goals and is really brilliant. But as a part of the team, we don't feel important at all. So we don't feel respected. So my suggestion, my recommendation to you is no matter how brilliant you are, don't be this kind of a guy. So you need your entire team to achieve the tall goals that you're going to set for yourself. So so keep people in the loop, have a mutual respect for everyone, and ensure that you don't belittle people for your short-term benefit or happiness. With this, I would like to wish you all the best for the placements. I hope that you all will be successful in your careers, irrespective of what happens in the placement season. So, as Rancho said in Three Idiots, "काबिल बनो, कामयाबी खुद तुम्हारे पीछे आ जाएगी." So, this is the one thing that you have to remember through this season, through this placement season, and also throughout your life. Thank you for listening patiently, and I would be happy to take any questions that you might have now.
Thanks a lot, Sumit. That was an amazingly insightful talk. I mean, and it was a perfect end to it. I mean, with Rancho Das's sentence, that was really amazing. And I'm positive everyone had something or the other to take home from this talk. So, anyone with any queries can now raise your hands if you want, and you can unmute yourself to ask any questions, or you can type it up in the chat box as well. Okay, so I think I have a question which was asked to be by some of the students. So
Mhm.
one question is how much of a component of interdisciplinary engineering sectors is there in a core job? I mean, when you consider your job in the core industry, how often do
Mhm.
you have to collaborate with electrical engineers, aerospace engineers, or what kind of knowledge should you be having about other sectors?
Okay, so I did touch a little bit on this when I talked, but what I can emphasize is that just do not consider yourself to be a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer when you are in core. You basically need to have a strong base, a strong foundation of physics and math, and don't be shy of venturing into other disciplines. So there obviously to do certain specialized tasks. So let's say tomorrow you want to design a gas turbine blade. So not everybody, the aerospace engineer will have a lot more domain knowledge in this respect as compared to an electrical engineer, for example. But what you need to do is, apart from this extremely deep domain knowledge topics, most of the times what you will encounter in core jobs is that you need to have a breadth of experience. You need to have a breadth of knowledge. So, like I said, so as a mechanical engineer, if I don't understand how a transistor works, or if I don't understand, or if I don't know C, or I don't know Python, or something like that, then my hands get tied a lot. So then I have to really depend on somebody who is really good at these topics, and I have no way to understand if the requirements for this particular task. So what I would suggest is, yeah, you have a domain expertise in mechanical. You might specialize, let's say, with automation. You might specialize with manufacturing or thermal. So that is your core knowledge. That is your domain expertise. But at the same time, you have had courses like the elect courses. You have had some courses in programming. Use these as well to augment whatever you can bring to the company as value, and at the same time keep building on your skill set. So one instance that I can give is back in 2008, machine learning was called statistics, and now you have a lot of different flavors to it. But in this intermediate time in 2012 and 13, when machine learning started becoming like it was shown to be the solution to all problems in life. At that point, I stopped and wondered, is it something that is a real new development, or is it something that I can catch up? And then I went back, I did a couple of courses online on machine learning, and now I don't have to be afraid when a colleague tells me, hey dude, this is based on machine learning, and this is really advanced stuff. I don't need to be uncertain about where I am, what I am getting into. And this is the expertise that you need to keep building over and over again. So the learning really never stops, and you need to have a breadth of experience in of your entire industrial sector. Do not limit yourself to being just a mechanical engineer henceforth.
Hello.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
Hi, Simit. I just wanted to ask a question that how possible is it for a recently graduated engineer like I'm in fourth year to land in a
Mhm.
core job through networking or apping like off campus?
Um, so I think for so off campus there you yeah I think networking is your best bet because going into the huge ocean of off campus applying to companies might not be the best way. But if you have some seniors in working in certain companies that you aspire for, you should get in touch with them. Each company, be it core or not, they have their internal job portals where they keep posting new job openings. And another advantage is that when an existing employee refers your profile internally, it gets picked up pretty soon because each company kind of has more trust in its own employees than an external consultant who brings them resumes. So try to get in touch with people you know in the companies that you aspire to be in. Ask them if they have certain job openings and request them if they can refer you through their internal job portals. That will be a much faster way for you to get an interview. Obviously, from the interview to getting the job is completely uh, your skill and your profile and the way you present yourself during the interview process.
Yeah, thanks, Sumit.
Great. So I think we've just crossed our time limit, but there is a question in the chat box. Is it okay if I ask that question, Simit?
Sure.
Great. So this question is from Milind Anil Karwade. So do you think there is a strong correlation between your CPI in rigid academia and your performance in the core industry?
That is a very good question. Uh, See, the thing is the CPI, though, you you can't really completely discount your CPI as well. So the CPI tells you how did you perform throughout the 4 or 5 years of your stay in campus. It also tells you how well you have understood the subject matter that you were taught. At the same time, I will interpret this question in two ways. I hope one of the ways is how you have intended it to be. So my first interpretation is, does the CPI count for getting a better opportunity in the industry? And what I will say is, I'll give you an example. So back 2 years back, we were hiring for one of the positions in our group, and my colleague and I, we designed an online problem where we designed the entire problem structure on GitLab. It was not a programming assignment; it was a system modeling assignment, and it was nicely tied up with a lot of automated processes on GitLab. And interestingly, when we were posting this as a job opening, the HR asked us, so what do you want to specify as restrictions for jobs? So should I limit it to electrical engineers, mechanical engineers? Should I limit it to 5 years in the industry? Should I limit it to people from IITs? Or what do you want the restriction to be? And at that point, I don't know if the job offer still is seen on as an archive on LinkedIn, but our job offer said anybody with 10th standard education who can solve this problem and top our leaderboard will get a call for the interview. So there was no restriction on what you studied in your college. So forget about CPI. We went to the extent of saying we don't care if you're an engineer. We don't care if you finished 12th. We don't care if you have completed your education yesterday or 20 years back. If you can get onto the leaderboard, be in the top 4 or 5, we will call you for an interview. So this is one impact that I see, and this is also slowly changing when you look at targeted job offers. So there is obviously a bulk hiring where you can't really have this sort of filtering done at a qualitative level. So in such cases, you will see people putting up, okay, electrical engineers greater than 7.5 CPI should apply, and so on and so forth. But when you look at specialized group openings, especially in research groups, smaller groups where people do niche kind of work, so there you will see the attitude changing towards what you can do rather than what you have done in your life. So this is one interpretation of the problem of the question that you asked. The other interpretation I feel is so for you yourself to make a decision, does your CPI tell you that you are good enough or not? So here I think it is a very introspective kind of question. There are a lot of reasons why you might have a good CPI. So there's no reason to have a good CPI. You have obviously studied much harder. You have a knack of it. You are very good analytically, so on and so forth. So you might get a good CPI. But on the other hand, if you get a bad CPI, you know best what went wrong. So it could be that you had some family emergency during a certain important exam. You just could not pick up a certain particular course which was worth 8 credits, or you were going through some mental trouble during a particular couple of semesters. So these things will reflect on your CPI, but it will not really make me a judge of whether you are good enough or not. And this is something that you have to judge by yourself. Uh, Go for interviews, look at what sort of problems is the industry solving. See if you can understand or you can contribute to typical public problems that the industry has. And if you think that you are confident enough, then I don't think a low CPI should stop you from believing that you can do well in a core job. Did
I
I
think
answer the question
we,
well, or is there some other aspect that you were looking for?
yeah,
No, my question is answered. Thanks.
Okay.
great. So there are no more questions in the chat box. So are there any questions? Anyone would like to raise their hand or unmute themselves?
Yeah, hi Sumit. Good evening.
Hi.
I wanted to ask a question about salary. As we
Mhm.
know that non-co people are going to get a good salary in starting, but I
Mhm.
wanted to know how it is going to vary. Like you have some 11 years of experience, so you must have
Mhm.
an idea about how does it vary with time.
Mhm.
Obviously, for a good candidate who works hard, it's going to be high. But for an
Mhm.
average guy, can you compare both in core and non-core, how the salary is going to increase in 10 or 15 years? Thank you.
Okay, so I can't talk a lot about non-core, but what I know is if you look at typical non-core companies, you might have finance companies, you might have consulting. A big chunk of their salaries is dictated by bonuses, and this is a performance bonus that is given out based on what they themselves could achieve during the particular year. And this kind of is a big chunk of the salaries that the people in non-core get. So this culture is not yet so pervasive in tech companies. Sure, some smaller tech companies who are taking off the ground have these performance incentives so that the employees work much harder. But if you look at bigger tech companies, they don't have this sort of a culture where they have a huge chunk of your salary being paid as performance bonus. So that is one basic difference between the salaries that you would expect in a core or a non-core job. But on the other hand, as I said, the starting salaries obviously are quite different for core jobs. They are much lower than what you would get in a finance or at a consulting job. What happens is uh, the more you start adding value, and that is a couple of years into the organization, you will start adding a lot of value to the organization. And at that point, uh, so just to give you an example, typically over 10 years or so, if I were to compare even just the basic starting salaries as well, say that a 15 to 20% year-on-year growth rate is something that you can expect over 10 years. And that really kind of tries to level out the salary gaps that you would start with at the beginning of your career.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So I think we've answered a lot of questions and we've quite exceeded our time limit. So I think we should take one more question. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the last question. Vidyut, I think you had raised your hand.
Hi, yes. I have a
Go
small
ahead.
question. Uh, my question majorly, so I'm a second year student,
Mhm.
and so I'm looking ahead, and my question is how did your specific specialization in MTech help you in
Mhm.
the bigger picture apart from just interest?
Okay, that is kind of a tricky question. So it's basically uh, so nobody hired me because I was a CADA specialization and somebody else who was a SIM or a TFE specialization did not get through just because I had CADA on my resume. What helped me through the interview processes is not just that I had this particular specialization, but because I worked, so my course projects, my co-curricular activities kind of reinforce the fact that I am not just a CADA engineer on paper, but I am a robotics enthusiast. I am a person who understands robotics in the heart and soul as well. So, especially just having CADA on your resume will not open doors. It needs to be backed up by the kind of profile that you show for what you have on your degree. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I have a small follow-up based on compare it to a non-dual degree student. What would you say over there?
Okay, so compared to a non-dual degree, one word of caution I would say. Typically, core jobs have a little, and I feel it is slightly misplaced priority. But core jobs typically try to prefer DDs and MTechs as compared to BTech students. So, and this is a rule that I think is placed in by the HR department without really consulting the technical managers. But this is somehow the norm in a lot of bulk hiring that goes on. So while the BTech guys might be at a slight disadvantage at the start of their career, uh, I think that in spite of a lack of specialization, as long as you can show in the form of co-curricular projects, in the form of let's say you've had some research experience in your internship, if you've had some quality BTech projects, or you have a minor, let's say these days you also have minor subjects. So if you have a minor in some allied topics, so this kind of adds to your profile. And the disadvantage that you start off as a BTech student kind of gets erased, and you can build your profile. Another thing that you can also focus on is a lot of companies now also look at your public profiles, and I don't mean Facebook and Twitter, but I'm talking about GitHub profiles, or if you have a GitLab profile. So a lot of companies might want you to share your GitLab or a GitHub profile, and they would be interested in going through what kind of contribution are you doing to the open source world. What kind of projects have you built by yourself? So this is something that you can also think about. So this is going to add to your the weight to your profile. And of course, if all of it still does not work, you could always do an MS and get back into the industry.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you so much.
Great. So I think all questions have been answered. Great. So thanks a lot, Simit, for taking out this time to talk with us, and it was a real pleasure to have you with us. And have a great day. And I think, yeah, I think we have come to the end of this talk. So thanks a lot, Simit.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you guys. And please feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions. I will answer them at some point or the other, but probably a little delayed. Closer towards the weekends is when I would be in a position to answer the questions.